It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
My personality is I want to win badly. I want to win more Lombardis for Philadelphia and our fans. We got the greatest fans around, and I will do everything possible.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you this hour by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher is here. The assistant coaches all spoke today. I talked a little Eagles before you came on, Jeff. There's some interesting Eagles stuff in my head. You have stuff out there, so let's get into a little Football at 4 here. As everybody's got the mandatories, a lot of teams have the mandatories. The Eagles do not, but they are having their coaches available. And I thought Jeff Stoutland, a guy who doesn't talk all that much, had some interesting things to say today. So let's dive into that, because last week we talked a little bit about the Dillard-Mailata matchup at left tackle, and Jeff Stoutland gave a little insight on what that might look like today.
He certainly did, and it's always good to catch up with Jeff Stoutland because when you're in our line of work, Mike, the one thing you really do like is a talker, someone who's animated, and there's no more perfect match than coach to personality, like offensive line and a real gregarious coach than Jeff Stoutland to the Eagles offensive line coach, because he's got a lot of personality and he's a big talker, and yeah, he shed a decent amount of light on the Andre Dillard, Jordan Mailata competition. And just the fact that himself, Mike, he acknowledged what we already knew, but you want to hear it from officially. It's a competition. So I know that there's a school of thought that Andre Dillard's a first-round pick and that he would be the lead horse as long as he was healthy. And I think it goes to show that that's not the case, the way Stoutland described it, it's 50-50. He has been very impressed with how Andre Dillard has got himself prepared this past year to battle for the job, but it is going to be a battle for the job. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and, it's one thing to kind of say that. We'll see, I guess, when they get out in the field, but the anticipation it was be. But if I were, like Adam had said on Friday, he thinks the betting favorite, if they're, we're in the sports betting world, would be Mailata, and he seems to be, in his mind, a pretty heavy favorite, it sounds like, anyway. Do you think that they want Mailata to win the job?
I know people think this, and maybe it's true, but I really have a hard time in this situation thinking that they root for a specific person over just the best person. I think it benefits them differently and uniquely no matter who wins the left tackle job. If Jordan Mailata wins, they get a chance to, because he's already 3 years in, give him an extension right now that could be very team friendly, because he's a year away from free agency. He's had an injury history, and you could probably get him at a left tackle number for a long term that's going to be quite low compared to some of the best left tackles in the league. I mean, it's still going to be good money for a left tackle, but you don't have to pay him, otherworldly type of number right now. If Andre Dillard wins, you have the advantage of saying, well, this is our first round pick, and he clearly had some obstacles he had to overcome, and he did overcome them, and now he can tap into the potential that we saw when we drafted him in the first round, trading up 2 years ago. And there's also financial incentive there in that this will be his third year, so you get to wait. You don't have to even extend the contract right now. You can't. You have to have him go one more year, see how he plays, and then go with there. And then, of course, whoever doesn't win could become a big part of their depth or perhaps trade bait. So I don't believe in my heart of hearts that there's a rooting interest other than whoever is the best guy at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that the rest of the stuff that Stoutland talked about, too. I mean, it's almost as if he almost wants to have Jack Driscoll be a part of a battle for a starting job. He was talking glowingly about where he kind of fits in on this team.
Yeah, Mike, I remember telling you guys this in spring of last year, how much Jeff Stoutland likes Jack Driscoll. And that became true and pretty evident pretty early, as when Lane Johnson got hurt, or he was still hurting with the ankle, and they needed a starter at right tackle for the season opener. It was the rookie Jack Driscoll. So, and I think it was Nate Herbig that started right guard. So Matt Pryor was pushed out by Jack Driscoll. Not that it was, that hard, but that's tough for a rookie who didn't even have the normal OTAs that rookies tend to have. So that was a big feather in the cap for Jack Driscoll. I think he played well enough when he was in there to really see the potential. And again, Jeff Stoutland, I think 2 separate occasions during today's Zoom, talked about, he actually said he liked him coming out of college, but even he underestimated how good, how sudden and how quick he is, explosive off the ball, until seeing it up front live every day. So he really likes him. And Mike, what that says to me is, here's a guy who can play offensive tackle, but might also be able to play other positions. But if you've got, so-and-so, Mailata or Dillard winning the left tackle job, and they love Jack Driscoll as the top backup offensive tackle, what does that mean for the loser of the Mailata Dillard competition?
Right, do you keep 2 tackles, or does one guy play is the swing guy and plays them both? Or I guess you would keep 2 in the event that 2 guys went down. But right. If Lane Johnson got hurt, I guess you would go to Jack Driscoll. If the loser on the one side got hurt, you would go to the other guy, right? But that, so I guess there is room for both guys. But he seemed to really like him, which, obviously last year people say, well, these guys, the line last year was a mess. The problem is when you have to play them all together, and you have to play them together with a new guy next to you. If Nate Herbig and Jack Driscoll played 8 weeks together, by the 9th week, they'd probably have been a decent crew, right?
Yeah, the continuity was the biggest problem. 14 different offensive lines that they had to play, because individually there were some good things to like about some of these guys, but also not just the continuity. They're young. So even Jordan Mailata, who looked really good last year, Mike, for what he was, he gave up more sacks than your ordinary offensive tackle. But we could excuse that because we realize he's playing football for the first time in his life, and the positives are outweighing the negatives. So, yeah, the product wasn't good, but the development there was good. Nate Herbig did turn out to be, by the end of the year, a guy who I felt did a good job of, if you can't win your battle as far as pushing somebody far back, you can at least stalemate. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing a tweet here. The Eagles signing some kind of former Jags wide receiver, Michael Walker. I guess. Yeah, according to Schefter. So anyway, Nate Herbig is a guy who I thought was a good run blocker, right? And not a great pass protector, should be a backup, but still somebody who can give you some quality snaps like a Wisniewski did when they won the Super Bowl. He can get in there and hold his own. And, of course, Jack Driscoll looked decent at times. And, of course, Jordan Mailata looked like he could play. And so now you're looking at the team with Andre Dillard coming back, and Stoutland mentioned this today too. This team has depth. I mean, 2 years ago, the top guy coming in was either Halapoulides Vaitai, and when he was gone, it was Matt Pryor in the playoff game against Seattle, right? I mean, he had to start that game, and now Matt Pryor might not make this team. He probably shouldn't if the talent that they've drafted is good enough.
Well, and if you remember, Jeff, last year when Dillard got hurt, they went to Pryor first to play left tackle.
Yeah, and that was a disaster. Someone told me, I forget who it was, that Josh Sweat turned into J.J. Watt in those 2 days of camp, and basically made the All-Pro team going up against Matt Pryor at left tackle.
Okay, so Brandon Brooks is back. Brandon Brooks, his comment's my favorite of the offseason. I tore my Achilles once, and when I came back, I was the best, period. So what does Stoutland see from his veteran right guard?
Well, he said he was – it's funny. He echoed a sentiment that I had. I think I said it on Inside the Birds, maybe with you last time, is that I have no idea what to expect from Brandon Brooks. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he just came back and was a dominant player. It wouldn't surprise me if he came back and showed decline because of what he's been through. And Jeff Stoutland said the same thing. He said, I'll be honest with you, I did not know what to expect from Brandon Brooks, but he was very, very impressed with what he did see in obviously limited doses here in a non-contact, non-7-on-7 or 11-on-11 type of environment. But at least to see him out on the field and, asserting his presence again and in great athletic shape, he's got pretty good expectations for Brandon Brooks to resume his role as one of the best right guards in the league.
Lane Johnson, also another guy who's back here, and I know Stoutland, talked about the offense, but Lane Johnson's interesting because he likes Driscoll. They've got Mailata and Johnson here, so you mentioned the depth. All of a sudden, they got a bunch of guys that they like, but we keep kind of harping on if their best guys are out there, they're pretty good.
If their best guys are out there, they are assuming that they have not lost much between the Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks contingent on the right side, I would agree with you. They have a chance to be, one of the best, if not the best offensive line in the league again. But again, that's assuming everything works out well and everything goes good. And it's hard to do that when you know that 3/5 of these guys were on the Super Bowl team, and that's like 5 years ago now. So
yeah, and
they're all aging, is what I'm saying.
Here's another thing before we hear some of the stuff that some of the other guys said, which is if Lane Johnson gets hurt and Driscoll has to play, they're okay there. If Brandon Brooks gets hurt and Herbig has to play, they're okay with that. It's, again, if they have to play multiple of those guys at the same time. So they now have some good depth behind each guy if one guy goes down.
Yeah, but yes, they're okay in that they can hold their own. It's obviously not an apples-to-apples, right, replication there. If Lane Johnson goes down and you have to play Jack Driscoll, you're going to suffer a little bit.
It's like you mentioned with Vitae. He's not better than Peters, but if he's the only replacement on the line, you can kind of scheme to help him out.
Right. Exactly. You can hold your own, but it's hard to hold your own when 3 or 4 guys at any position just go down and drop like flies.
At the end of the year, if you say Mailata, Sayamala, Kelsey, Brooks, and Driscoll played 15 out of 16 games because Lane Johnson got hurt in game 1, okay, that's fine. We can do that. We can get through with Driscoll playing 15 games of right tackle next to Brandon Brooks. That's fine. It's if one game Brooks gets hurt and Herbig plays right guard, then the next game Matt Pryor plays right guard, and then somebody else, that's where it gets to be a problem. All right, exactly. Mosher's here from the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. We were talking about Pro Football Focus ranked the Eagles' defensive line top 5 in the league. Number 5 best defensive line in football. So if you have a good offensive line and you have a good defensive line, you must be pretty good. No, we know they have good talent on the front, but Tracy Rocker spoke today, and we all kind of are wondering, well, they were good defensive line because Jim Schwartz kind of counted on those guys, and he wide 9, and they got to the quarterback. Is that going to be similar? How do we expect to see Tracy Rocker's unit under Jonathan Gannon's system?
I would love to know Tracy Rocker's honest opinion of how he felt the Eagles' defense was run over the last 2 years, because there's many years, I should say, under Jim Schwartz, because there's one thing that he said that I don't think was a veiled shot at Jim, but I just think it kind of let you into his philosophy and how that's different than Jim. And his philosophy is, yes, he was asked if they're going to be an attacking defensive front. And he said, yes, of course we're going to be attacking defensive front. But he said, but let's not forget about situational football. We're not going to attack in every single situation. He says, what if we're backed up on our own 10, right? And they're really coming at us. And, I think that's what he said. Something of that. And we really need to stop the run there. Do you think that, we're going to be going for the quarterback when the other team comes out and they're trying to run the ball down our throats? So I think what he was saying is, like, you can't always be in attack the quarterback mode. You have to adjust to the situation at hand. And again, I don't think he was calling out Jim Schwartz by any stretch of the means, but that's kind of what we were used to, right, for the last few years, of just the quote unquote play the run on the way to the quarterback. Everything's about getting to the quarterback first and foremost. And he talked about Tracy Rocker, situational football, a little bit of read and react, which is certainly a different philosophy than what Jim Schwartz would preach, which was just get upfield. So really interested in seeing how the difference in the dynamic here on the defensive line.
Yeah, and obviously everybody's, Pro Football Focus also ranked the defensive backs, the secondary, I should say. The Eagles weren't the worst. There were 7 teams worse than them, believe it or not. 7 worse.
I do believe that. I can believe it.
7
because the Eagles have Slay, at least. I mean, they're like the Panthers. Who do the Panthers have at corner right now? They have like nobody. Oh, they drafted J.C. Horn, right? But I mean, there are a couple of teams out there, like the Cardinals, or it's almost like you can't name their.
The 7 secondaries below the Eagles, let's see, were Seattle, Jacksonville, the Jets, the Raiders, the Lions, Dallas, and the Falcons.
Can't argue. I'm sure they're all pretty bad.
In other words, Carolina, by the way, was 2 steps in front of you. They were 23. Philadelphia's 25. They said Slay. They mentioned Anthony Harris is a very good upgrade over Mills. And they talked about they got an upgrade on Avonte Maddox. So what did Denard Wilson say today about what they envision Maddox's role being?
Yeah, I had the leadoff question on the Zoom for Denard Wilson. So I asked him about Avonte Maddox, and specifically I said, have you looked back at his tape that goes all the way back to his rookie year when he played safety? And I asked if he kind of has a feel for where Avonte Maddox fits best right now in this defense. I did not get an answer, by the way. I didn't expect one. I mean, I didn't get an exact, yes, we think he's a slot corner or we're going to play him at safety. But he did say he's been working on technique and fundamentals with Avonte. And he did say Avonte has been taking notes to know every position. And I do think you'll see the Eagles kind of follow along this trend lately of and they already did it a little bit last year with Jalen Mills, but kind of trying to make guys into hybrids or not just typecast them into one specific position on the field, but try to make use of them by moving them around.
All right, but we're running short, so I want to get a couple things here on the offensive side of the ball. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. I don't know if that makes me feel any better about Avonte Maddox, by the way, and how they're going to use him. I would like to see maybe him be a reserve player and not a starting player. That might be his best role. What about Travis Fulgham and what Aaron Moorhead said? You know, is he, in Aaron Moorhead's mind, is he salvageable? Is he somebody? Is he a part of this offense?
Definitely. Aaron Moorhead said that what you saw in those 4-week span last year where he was among the NFL leaders in catches and receiving yards was not a fluke. He said you don't do those kind of things if you don't have that kind of talent. So for him, he said, Travis had to get used to the idea of people scheming against him. The other offensive coordinator now saying defensive coordinator saying this is a guy that we have to shut down, and the physical play and being a guy who has all that success and maintaining it. A lot of it, what he seemed to suggest, Mike, was like the mentality. We've talked a lot about that on Inside the Birds, about this group of young wide receivers really have to grow up quickly. They have to mature. They have to understand that every second of their day at the NovaCare complex, they have to treat like it's their last second because they're young and they don't have a veteran leader, and they've got to grow up fast and be productive. And that's where he was with Fulgham. Where I disagreed with what he said is he said that he didn't feel that Alshon Jeffrey's return had anything to do with Fulgham's regression. He called it just an impeccable timing, and I don't know that I agree that that's just an impeccable timing.
I would probably agree with that, right? I mean,
yeah.
On top of that, you had Fulgham last year. You also had Rieger, and I'm interested, did Moorhead give any indication that they didn't use him the best last year?
He mostly gave an indication that he felt like that he could and should be used more, but also that he feels that Rieger is a tough kid, more so than maybe the public thinks. He mentioned the whole social media and sometimes funneling all that out. And he said that Jalen, it's not that Jalen was impacted negatively by what people were saying about him and Justin Jefferson comparisons, but he knew that it was out there. And, anytime you know it and it's there and it's prevalent, it kind of hangs over you. So he didn't feel like it affected his play more so than maybe the being a rookie and the injuries that he had to deal with. Mm-hmm. But he was aware of what was out there.
Some moves by the Eagles seconds ago, I should say. Quarterback Jamie Newman has been waived, as is Khalil Tate, and the. We were all waiting for Trayvon Grimes to be like the training camp, darling. Well, he has also been waived.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been on this show with you a couple of times, and I've tried to tell, how the fans kind of cling to certain guys and say not to get so excited about certain players, Trayvon being one and Jamie Newman being the other. I mean, there were people, by the way, professionals, who had takes that Jamie Newman was going to beat out Joe Flacco for the backup job. So I can only do so much.
Well,
Mike, so
I will say this. Jamie Newman, people thought, at least could hang around. They only still have 2 quarterbacks on the roster. You would think they need a camp arm.
Well, I imagine that they'll probably bring in a camp arm.
And Khalil Tate played quarterback too in college, and he's gone now.
Well, maybe Greg Ward will have to take a few.
Ward, we need you to throw the ball a little bit. Real quick, I asked Andrew this yesterday. Do you think Ward's role will be diminished?
I think it has the potential to be diminished only because there's younger, more explosive, weapons at his position. But those guys have to prove it. So, is the potential for him to take a playing time hit there? Yeah, but remember, he wasn't supposed to have this much playing time in the first place. He was a guy who benefited from being reliable and dependable and stepping up at a time where there were so many injuries, whether it was Alshon, whether it was Deshaun, whether it was go back to 2019, a couple of guys, even J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was hurt 2 years ago. So he benefited from that and stuck. But as I say all the time, he's the type of player that is a great guy to have, but you're always looking to upgrade over.
All right, you're dependable as well. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. New one drops on Thursday, 6 o'clock in the morning when you wake up. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast. And Adam Kaplan will be here tomorrow for that at 4 o'clock for football at 4. And Andrew's back.
I like
on
that you're
Friday.
repping Vanderbilt, by the way. That's a nice shirt.
Yeah, that's a second. That's a second reference of my Vanderbilt shirt today. Well, Jason
I know
Fitz.
you missed an opportunity with Fitz. You started talking about your South Jersey kid, Tracy Rocker. Did you bring up Tracy Rocker?
No, Fitz said about my van. He noticed it.
Yeah, but you could have said, we got a coach here, Tracy Rocker, whose kid is Kumar Rocker, the best or second best pitcher on Vanderbilt.
You know what? It's funny. He did bring up the Vanderbilt. I said, well, I coached a kid who's committed to Vanderbilt to play baseball.
Right.
And I have visited the Vanderbilt. People always say, I have these wacky college shirts, right? I have all the, wacky. They're like, I have these random college shirts, right? People are like, why do you have a Vanderbilt shirt? Why do you have Syracuse? Why do you have Yale? I said, these are all campuses that I have visited. So I have shirts from all the different campuses that I have
I'm visited. The same type. I like to get mementos.
Yeah, I'd like to, so I was at Vanderbilt, and that's where I have my Vanderbilt shirt on today.
It was interesting to hear Tracy Rocker Zoom today because he was asked about Kumar.
I didn't realize that was his son.
Yeah, that's his son, and he almost was reluctant to. He's a proud dad, of course, but he almost kept slipping in. I wish he would have been a football player. I'm like, this guy's probably going to be a top 3 draft pick in MLB and make a ton of money. And
speaking of top draft pick in the NFL, that's a good tease for my next segment. Do you remember on this day? 5 years ago, the Phillies had the first pick in the draft.
Was it Mickey?
There you
go. Was it the Mick?
There you go. That was just a little tease. So we got this day, on this day, do you remember, coming up next? He's Geoff Mosher. They have the Inside the Birds podcast tomorrow morning, and Jeff, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, man, I guess we got some catching up to. I got a picture on my phone of a little site check today.
Oh, nice. I look forward to have that conversation.
All right, man. See ya.
Take care.
All right, he does an excellent job on the Inside the Birds podcast, him and Adam Kaplan and Andrew DeCecco here for football at 4.